The auctioneer read out Lot 47 in front of the Weller & Sons General Store on the 12th of April at 11:30 in the morning, and Lot 47 was the 7-year household labor contract of Luella Trent, widowed sister-in-law of Cletus Trent, and Vane Bostwick, 33, standing at the back of the crowd of 40 in his one good coat, went very still. He had known Luella Trent since she and her late husband Silas had homesteaded next to his ranch in '79. He had known Cletus Trent by reputation, a hard-drinking younger brother of Silas's, with a taste for other people's money. The auctioneer said, "Ma'am, please step forward." Luella Trent stepped forward. She was 30. She was in a plain gray dress. Her hands were folded in front of her. Her jaw was set. She was not weeping. Her eyes were exactly level. The auctioneer read the contract aloud. The contract said that Luella Trent, in consideration of $42 owed by her late husband Silas Trent to his brother Cletus Trent, and in default of any other payment, agreed to render 7 years of household labor to whichever party purchased the contract at the auction of Silas Trent's estate on the 12th of April, 1884. The contract was signed with Luella's name in a hand that was not hers. Vane Bostwick knew Luella's hand. He had received 4 Christmas cards from her in 5 years. He knew her hand well enough to know that the signature on Cletus Trent's contract was Cletus Trent's forgery. The auctioneer said, "Bidders, the bid opens at $10. A voice at the front said, "10. Vane Bostwick did not know the voice. He learned later that it was a man from Cheyenne who had come specifically for the labor contracts. The voice bid again, 12, 14. Vane Bostwick, at the back of the crowd, said, in a voice that reached the auctioneer without shouting, 50. The auctioneer looked at him. The Cheyenne bidder said, 52. Vane Bostwick said, 100. The Cheyenne bidder said, 110. Vane Bostwick said, 200. The Cheyenne bidder looked at Vane Bostwick and closed his mouth. The auctioneer said, 200 once, 200 twice, 200 going. Cletus Trent, at the front, said, 210. Vane Bostwick said, 500. The crowd of 40 went very still. Cletus Trent went red. He looked at his own boots. He said, I withdraw. The auctioneer said, 500 once, 500 twice. Sold to Mr. Vane Bostwick of the Bostwick Ranch. Vane Bostwick walked through the crowd of 40 to the auctioneer's stand. He took the folded contract from the auctioneer. He walked over to Luella Trent, who had not moved from where the auctioneer had told her to stand. He said quietly, Mrs. Trent. Luella said, Mr. Bostwick. He said, would you take the contract? She took it. He said, would you please open it and read the last paragraph aloud so the whole of Weller Street hears it? Luella Trent opened the folded paper. She read the last paragraph aloud in a plain, steady voice. The last paragraph said that any purchaser of the contract could, at his sole discretion, declare the contract satisfied and void it at will and without any obligation to the widow. She said, Mr. Bostwick. Vane Bostwick said, please tear it in half, Mrs. Trent. In 4 pieces if that suits you. I have declared it satisfied. You are free of it, of Cletus Trent, and of the fabricated debt of $42. Please do it in the sight of the whole street, so no man in this county can say the words labor contract and Luella Trent in the same sentence again. Luella Trent tore the contract in half. She tore it into 4 pieces. She tore it into 8. She let the pieces fall on the boards at her feet. Vane Bostwick said, to the auctioneer, I will settle at the bank at 3. Mr. Trent, Cletus Trent, I will see you at the sheriff's at 3:30 about the signature. Good day. He turned. He walked back through the crowd. Luella Trent stayed at the auctioneer's stand for 2 seconds. Then she followed him. She caught him at the corner of Weller Street. She said, Mr. Bostwick, I do not know how to say thank you for a $500 action. Vane Bostwick said, Mrs. Trent, do not thank me for money. It is not money that mattered. Come to the boarding hotel. Take a room. I have paid for a fortnight in your name, because I did not know if you would need to think. If you would rather leave Trentville and go east, I will pay your fare. If you would rather come out to my ranch and take honest work at the ordinary rate of an honest housekeeper, I will pay you the ordinary rate. If you would rather sit at the boarding hotel a fortnight and think, please sit at the boarding hotel a fortnight and think. I am not asking for anything. I am asking you not to answer today. Luella Trent stood on the corner of Weller Street with the 8 pieces of her contract in the small brown paper the auctioneer had given her, and looked at Vane Bostwick a long moment. She said, Mr. Bostwick, I have thought a great deal in 7 months of Cletus's threats. I would like to come out to your ranch and take honest work at the ordinary rate. I do not want the fortnight. I want to work. Please drive me now. Vane Bostwick said, Mrs. Trent, please do not decide today. Luella said, I have decided. He drove her. He drove her out to his ranch. He put her in the West Room. He hired his older cousin Netta from town, 63, sensible, unmarried, to come stay a month as chaperone at $4 a week. He paid Luella $8 a week as housekeeper. He rode into town twice more in April on Luella's behalf. He rode to see the sheriff about the forged signature. Cletus Trent was arrested and charged. Cletus produced a Cheyenne attorney. The attorney produced a bill of goods that unraveled inside 2 weeks. Cletus was sentenced to 18 months at the county farm and stripped of any claim on the Silas Trent estate. The estate, a small homestead of 40 acres, was returned to Luella under Judge Callis's ruling on the 14th of May. Vane Bostwick did not, during the whole of April or May, press Luella Trent toward anything. He did not ask her to be more than his housekeeper. He answered her at the plank table. He listened. He did not court. Luella watched him do all of this. On the last Sunday of June, at supper, with Netta at the head of the table and the crew of 6 at the far end, Luella Trent set her fork down and said, Vane. He said, Luella. She said, I would like to say a plain thing. I would like Netta to hear it. I would like the crew to hear it. Vane said, say it. Luella said, I have been a widow of Silas Trent for 11 months. I loved Silas. I have thought about him at least once a day of the 11. I will think of him at least once a day for the rest of my life. That is what I have to say about Silas. She said, I have been an employee of your ranch since the 12th of April. I have been treated by you and by Netta and by the crew as a person of the household. I have been paid fairly. I have been housed properly. I have been protected as if I were a sister. I have been asked for nothing that was not written in an honest agreement. She said, that is what I have to say about the ranch. She said, now, I would like to say a plain thing about you, Vane Bostwick. I have thought about it for 6 weeks. I do not want to be your housekeeper. I want to be your wife. I am asking, plainly, at your own plank table, in front of your cousin and your crew. I have not been asked. I am asking. I would like to hear you answer plainly. Netta, at the head of the table, said quietly, nephew. Vane Bostwick, who had been holding a plain question of his own since the corner of Weller Street on the 12th of April, said, Luella, yes, yes to all of it. I have been holding it too. I have been afraid to press you. I would like nothing better. Old Wick the foreman, at the far end of the table, said, about the bunkhouse approved. The crew laughed. Netta wiped her eyes without pretending she had gotten pepper in them. The circuit preacher married Vane Bostwick and Luella Trent in the front room of the Bostwick Ranch on the last Sunday of July. Netta gave the bride away. Old Wick stood witness for Vane. The crew of 6 lined the doorway in their Sunday shirts. Judge Callis, invited on Luella's private word, drove out from town in a rented buckboard because he had, he said, taken a personal interest in the whole affair. Afterward, on the porch step, Luella sat with Vane and watched the pasture go gold under the last July sun. She said, Vane. He said, Luella. She said, the $500. He said, it was worth every dollar. She said, how did you have $500 in cash on the 12th of April in your one good coat pocket? Vane Bostwick said, I did not. I had $30 in cash. I had signed a piece of paper at the Weller & Sons front counter at 10:45 that morning. that made every bidder at that auction eligible to bid up to $1,000 against my own account, because I had guessed on the ride into town from Cletus Trent's letter of 2 weeks back what Cletus Trent was going to try. I had come prepared. I had also brought Judge Callis a folder of the 4 Christmas cards you had sent me over the previous 5 years, which contained your actual signature, so that Judge Callis had comparison evidence for the forgery. I had prepared for an auction and a forgery trial in the same trip. Luella Trent Bostwick said, "Vane, you are a very well-planned man." Vane said, "Luella, so are you. You wrote me 4 Christmas cards over 5 years, in a hand that was distinctive enough that I remembered it. That is planning too." She kissed his rough cheek. 2 years on a warm September evening at the Bostwick Ranch, Luella Bostwick sat on the porch step with Vane beside her, and their small son, called Silas Trent Bostwick, because Vane had asked her, asleep against her chest. Silas was 7 months old, and had his mother's steady jaw and his father's careful gray eye. Netta sat in the porch rocker with a piece of muslin she was mending, which was her private pretense that she had come out to the ranch for 2 years without moving in. Netta said, without opening her eyes, "Nephew." Vane said, "Aunt Netta." Netta said, "I told you at the plank table in June that this would come out well." Vane said, "You did, Aunt Netta." Netta said, "Do not say I did not." Vane said, "I would not, Aunt Netta." Netta said, "Good." The pasture went to gold. Silas slept. Luella put her cheek against her husband's shoulder. And Luella Trent Bostwick, who had stood at an auctioneer's stand on the 12th of April with the 8 pieces of a forged contract in a small brown paper bag, put her hand into her husband's hand and understood that the good slow country had, in its good slow way, arranged for 4 Christmas cards a widow had sent a neighbor over 5 ordinary years to become. On one plain, honest morning in April, the specific comparison evidence a Colorado judge had needed to void a forgery, and had, on that one plain, honest arrangement, given her back not just her 40-acre homestead, but the whole rest of a household under the Bostwick roof she had, once, in 7 bad months, all but stopped believing was hers to hope for. And so it had.